Vendela Vida, welcome to Book, Television, and HarperCollins in Conversation with Authors.
Thank you.
Let the Northern Lights Erase Your Name is your second book of fiction. Tell me about that story.
Let the Northern Lights Erase Your Name is about a young woman named Clarissa Iverton who's 28, and she's living in New York. And when her father, on the night that her father dies, after the funeral, she's going through his paperwork in his desk, and she comes across her birth certificate. And she's never seen her birth certificate before. And on on the space where she thinks she's going to see her father's name, Richard is the name of the man she just buried, instead there's a name with many vowels, the name Eero Valkeapää. And this sends her on a quest to try to find out who Eero Valkeapää is and why he's on her birth certificate. She can't ask her mother about the true identity of her father because her mother abandoned the family 14 years prior to her father's death when Clarissa was 14 years old. So she does find out that Eero Valkeapää is a priest, a Sami priest, and living in Lapland. And the Sami are the indigenous population of Lapland, which is where Sweden and Norway and Finland all come together at the tip of Scandinavia. So she goes on this sort of odyssey to try to track down her father and find out who she really is.
So you have chosen to write, I mean, my goodness, there are a lot of themes in this book, but place and setting primarily is Lapland.
Right.
In winter.
Yes.
I mean, this is, I don't know, what is that, about half an hour of light during the day? Why? Why winter?
Then? I went to Lapland 3 times when I was researching the novel, and I really fell in love with it in the winter. And I love the fact that it's dark all the time. Yes, and kids are walking around with flashlights and, you know, finding their way home from school with flashlights. But if you look really carefully, there are all these subtle gradations in the darkness, and I was really drawn to that. And I also love the idea that the physical landscape of Lapland would mirror Clarissa's emotional state at the time, and she would almost feel more comfortable there than she would in a place that wasn't reflective of what she was going through. So I wanted it to take place in winter, and I knew that from the beginning. Namely because she's feeling emotionally bereft. The landscape is obviously very bereft. Her emotions at the time are very like staccato emotions and almost very, she's going through a period of shock, and I felt like the landscape reflected that as well, and that she would feel more and more at home as she traveled there, and even as she went more and more north and it got darker and colder, she would feel increasingly comfortable as she got closer to finding out the secret of her identity.
I don't want to give anything away because there are some very, very shocking moments in your book. At least I found a couple of them to be quite shocking and very profound. This is, you have some very strong male characters, but this for me felt like a woman's story. A story of survival and also a story of victimization. Were you consciously thinking about that as you went in to write this, or did that just play itself out as the story came to be?
That's a really good question. I am writing these 3 books as sort of a trilogy. The first novel was And Now You Can Go, and then this second book, Let the Northern Lights Erase Your Name, is kind of the second book in this trilogy of what I think of as exploring the themes of violence and forgiveness. So I knew there was going to be some idea of victimhood and what that meant to various people in the book. And I was also rebelling a little bit against the notions and the ideas of my first book, in which there's a very tight mother-daughter bond, for example, in the first book, and the mother's very, almost like a saint. And so in this book, I wanted to explore what would happen if the mother character was the complete opposite. She's someone who is definitely not a saint by anyone's definition, and abandoned the family when she was 14 and did all those things that a mother isn't supposed to do. So in some ways, it's very liberating to have a theme that you know you're exploring, and because you know your themes from the outset. But on the other hand, it's somewhat of a constraint because with each book you kind of have to adjust and refocus your characters and your themes.
Why do you think that is, that the idea that there are certain things that a mother isn't supposed to do? Yet, I mean, there's lots of debate and questioning of, why it is that so many men leave families, and there seems to be an understanding, or at least the ability to look at that. But when it comes to women, if a woman leaves her family, I mean, there is something deeply, deeply flawed, irreparably flawed, it seems, about her, even before she had children.
Yeah, I don't know why that is, but I was definitely trying to explore that stereotype in this book and thinking about why it is that this woman is just hated because she leaves her family. And in fact, some of the decisions that Clarissa makes along the way are also sort of controversial to some extent, and a lot of people have asked me, oh, why does she do that, or why do you think she does that, or is that a choice that you would agree with? And I don't write books to say, oh, this is how I think people should live their lives. I'm not trying to be morally prescriptive, and I don't like to write books that put a big bow on the ending and tie up solutions, but I do like to just raise questions that make us think about the way we live and make us think about why we have these stereotypes. So the very fact that you're, asking about the mother-daughter bond and why it is that we expect this as mothers is kind of my perfect. I'm glad you raised that question.
Good. Well, another theme in your book that really hit me, because this is something that I think about a lot, is whether or not, or the degree to which it is predetermined that we will repeat our past, that things are just going to happen. We will become our parents. We will make the same, no matter what, we will make the same mistakes, that history is destined to repeat itself. Do you believe that? Are you exploring that at all?
I'm definitely exploring that, and I was thinking about, my whole belief is that you don't have to repeat the past. It is a choice, but in some ways, I don't want to give away the ending in the book, but Clarissa does make some choices that are actually startlingly similar to her mother's decisions, although not as ruthless.
You've written a beautiful, beautiful book. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel.